We're live.
And that's what she said. Well, but she was
Anyway,
right. I mean,
you threw me a curveball. I don't know where to. We want to welcome you to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Mark Lindsay is on the West Coast. Eloy Escajedo is here on the East, and we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. Hope you enjoy the weekend, folks. Goodbye.
Yeah, really. Sounded like you were getting ready to. I was getting ready to pull up the banner.
So what's new?
Oh man, all kinds of stuff. We're in that what's it called? That purgatory in between winter and spring. I know what the calendar says, but Mother Nature can't decide if she wants it 80 degrees or 40 degrees. So it's kind of a crapshoot. So I might be able to go outside today, but the minute I even look at the lawnmower, it's pouring down rain again. And it's like, okay, come on. Grass is getting thicker and thicker. I got to be able to cut it sometime. Must start hearing jungle noises out in the backyard again.
After eating cabbage for a few days, I've been cutting something else.
Yeah, we had cabbage tonight, and like I said, I don't know if it's genetic or what, but I'm a fan of cooked cabbage, raw cabbage, coleslaw. Give it to me.
I'll swim in a pool of cabbage.
That's right. It's good, and it's good for you.
It really is.
Yeah.
Let's call this the cabbage episode.
Yeah, that's us, the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Um, I so you have something for us for this episode?
Oh, yeah, we do. Well, we do all kinds of stuff, but I was looking back at a few things. It's been a couple of weeks now, and folks talking about the price of this today and the price of that today, and it just got me to thinking. I started out by looking up what prices were like 50 years ago. And I looked at, okay, this was going on, that was going on, the other was going on. Then that kind of dovetailed into, well, what about the year you were born, which was 1975, and then the year I was born, which was 1961?
Scream it from the rooftop, Mark. Let everybody know.
I just did. And we look at it, the year, for instance, the year you were born, the price of a gallon of gas was 44 cents.
The year who was born?
You. It was 44 cents a gallon. That was that nationwide average. And it's like, man, that was 40 some odd years ago. Holy hell. But then I look back at what it was when the year I was born, 1961, it was 27 cents a gallon. We ain't never getting back to that. Ain't no way. But when you look at what it from 1961 to 1975 was 14 years. And it only went up, that's what, 23 cents? No, a little bit more than that. But it only went up 20 something cents. Well, not even 23 cents. 18 cents, something like that. 16 cents. What the hell happened? If it goes up 20 cents in 14 years, we should be just about $1.10 right now.
Let me
So
tell you
something ain't
how.
right.
Let me tell you how much of an exaggerator I am.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't have to convince you or anybody out in the chat about that.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you about the eggs. One day I walked in, saw eggs at a price that was unpalatable to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up simply saying, "Okay, from this point forward, no more eggs." I've eaten eggs one time after that, and it's been since the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I bought some IHOP.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed the hell out of those eggs, by the way.
Yeah.
But that was it, and I have not had since. Um, believe it or not. So I'm an exaggerator. So when it comes to this about gas,
Mhm,
I'm not gonna lie. In my mind, the way I don't know if it comes from us as hunter gatherers.
mhm.
You have to weigh things, and I don't know who, but I've actually said when seeing those things like those gas prices and such, I said, "Oh, really?" And but in addition to everything else, and I've said to myself, "Oh, really?" And I've actually
Mhm.
contemplated dropping the whole automobile thing and walking or biking. I've actually thought, and in a city like Miami, that's almost in any event,
Yep.
it's crossed my mind, and because inside of me, I'm like, oh yeah,
Well, you and I were born and raised with that independent thing. We were taught independence and self-reliance. That you had to get yourself to some place because nobody was going to do it for you.
I
So
mean
I
on
can see
occasion.
that. I can see how, well, you have to get to work on time. You can't be relying on somebody else to give you a ride,
No,
And
I
if you
figured it out on my own. Look,
so, but
that
I get it and I understand. And if I was in a similar situation to you, because most of the places that you need to go to the grocery store, go to this place or that place,
you
are
are right.
fairly close to you, right?
Okay, that is true. So if you live in the middle of high plains desert,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the next town is like quite a ways,
Hmm.
as opposed to a continuum of concrete jungle and
Yeah,
stores and all sorts of amenities, that does change things.
yeah.
You're right.
And so it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to me, for you to say, you know what, maybe I don't need to drive. Maybe I can just hop on the bike and go down there. Seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Listen about that.
Hmm.
I don't know how this, but it popped into my. The mind is an incredible thing.
Hmm.
I found something that connects with this, and I think it's funny. There's a clip somewhere online where it's a European girl
Hmm.
somewhere in Sweden. I don't
Hmm.
know exactly, maybe not Sweden, but something European.
Hmm.
She came to the United States to visit her American friends, or she was here at school or on vacation, something or other. But she ended up going out one evening
Hmm.
with a bunch of American kids her age, and they went to a restaurant. And as you
Sure.
know, as fine Americans or British folks and other folks that might be out there, Jamie Page has been here, but you guys would all know that in the United States of America, when you drive over to a shopping mall,
Hmm.
strip mall, there's a parking lot and then all your stores. But then if you look across the street,
Hmm.
there's there's a carbon copy of it more or less with other
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah.
So she and her friends went to eat, and then they get out of the restaurant, and as they're walking to the parking lot, they're saying, "Oh, look, over there on the other mall. Let's go visit this and that."
Hmm.
And then they said, "Okay, come on, let's go. Let's get in the car." And she says to her friends, "Guys, it's just across the street. Why don't we just cross the
Yeah.
road?" And they all looked at each other like she was crazy and said, "Get in the car."
Yeah.
So for her, in a European mindset, why would you get in the car again
Yeah.
if you're going to be in the same vicinity?
Yeah.
But in America, I would do that.
Yeah. Get a strip mall and you're going to go to this store at this end of the strip mall, and then you're going to go to that store at the other end of the strip mall. Will you back out of your parking space and drive down to the other end and park?
I would not. Um, it depends on the circumstance. But in this situation, it
Mhm.
was across the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, she has a point in terms of you could just cross the road. But in the United
Yeah.
States,
Yeah.
I
But
mean, maybe it's different for you, but I don't do that. I get in the car.
people fire up the car and back down their driveway to go to the mailbox right at the end of it, and then just pull back up into the garage. Yeah. Yeah. But that's our society. That's the way we were raised. We are very vehicle centric,
There's a
you
lot of
know.
continuums
Hmm.
of cultural very commonalities like
Hmm.
that are found just about, well, I can't say, but it
Right.
seems like I haven't been to every nook and you know of the United States to say either way, but I think that it seems like more often than not, stuff like that could
Mhm.
be witnessed anywhere across the United States.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. You know,
Even the Beatles crossed Abbey Road to get to the other side.
well, that's true, but only because that's where the bus stop was. You know, unless you live in a major metropolitan area in this country, and that's what a lot of folks don't understand. Unless you live in a major metropolitan city or rural built-up area, public transportation is basically just non-existent because there is so much space. I mean, we do have a bus service here, but the buses come every 4 to 5 hours because there's only 8,000 people living in this area. They just don't have the ridership. I don't think I've seen more than 3 or 4 people on a bus at a time. And a lot of times these buses are coming and going and they're absolutely empty, but they have a schedule to keep. So they keep going. We just don't have the population base to support it. Now
Don't you worry about that.
you go up north to Portland, they do have the population base to support it. And a lot of people use that public transportation system. It's just there's only 200,000 people in this entire county, and it's a big area. You know, we've got, I mean, you don't have to be rich to own 5 or 10 acres out here. That's very common. So we just don't have the population density to warrant it.
You just wait. We got them coming for you.
Well, you know, they've been saying that. I was born in 61 and the population of the big city here was 32,000. And last census, it's at 85,000. So in 60 years, it's only grown by what, 50,000 people. It's a very, very small rural area.
That has its perks,
So,
dude.
yeah.
Especially like what you said before, that you could just drive into town and you have all the amenities, or I'm sorry, items that generally you would want.
Well, we're right close to the main highway here that heads out to the northeast. So we do have a lot of the amenities are right here. I mean, I've got 6 or 7 fast food joints, grocery stores 3 miles down the road. Um, I got a Lowe's Home Improvement 4 miles the other direction down the same road. I mean, I can get anything I want with with some limitations, but it is a small town, so we don't have a lot of the things that a bigger town would have. So we don't have an Apple store, for example. So if you need an Apple product repaired, you're either going to pay some repairman locally, or you're going to drive either to Portland or to Sacramento to go to an Apple store. So it's one of the reasons I don't own an iPhone.
Well, I mean,
One of many.
yeah, this place here is a
Mm.
booming
Yeah,
uh,
it
town,
is. And
but
growing fast too.
oh yeah, but the thing about this is that on the downside, to get from A to B, there's always something or someone in your way in great amounts. Um, and what also suffers is quality of service at the local whatnot
Mhm.
store or whatever. So those are negatives. Whereas I'm assuming that in your area, the service would be better in a general sense.
It's a lot more laid back. And yeah, because, well, we were having this discussion, I think, behind the scenes last week, where it was like, think of how many customers the cashier at your grocery store sees in a day. How many hundred people go through her line
Yeah,
versus here, 50, maybe 60 over the course of an 8-hour shift because it
yeah.
is so much slower. It is so much more spread out. Now, but there are exceptions to the rule. Every Wednesday over the course of a month, one group of seniors is or another is getting a social security check, and you can tell the day that social security check hits the bank, the average hair color gets a lot grayer in the grocery store because they're stocking up for the month now. It's hilarious. So you don't go grocery shopping on a Wednesday is what I'm getting at. You go, if you're smart, you'll go the Monday before. So
Yeah, this town I had posted earlier. I think you saw it, about Little Havana, Flagler and 12th,
yes, I did see that one.
and it's from 1970. That image, but
Mhm.
there's a row
Mhm.
of stores in a strip mall,
Yeah.
outdoor strip mall on the side of the sidewalk,
Uh,
going down Flagler, and at one end is the big Firestone, uh, building with the sign and whatnot.
yeah.
And back then, and when I was little, like I mentioned in the post, we would travel by car from Sweetwater over here, over there.
Hmm.
And although I didn't perceive it like I would now, but I'm reflecting on it, over here was more, not really, but kind of more a Mayberry
Yeah.
level thing, as opposed to, I mean, it wasn't Mayberry, but you get the point. It was
Right.
more of a pseudo rural, not country whatsoever, but yet very much in that direction.
Yeah.
In terms of numbers and even the population, there was more non-Hispanic, Latino, whatever one would say, Anglo, neighbors and friends,
Hmm.
and so it was a different vibe. And
Yeah.
then we would travel over to Little Havana, and it
Mhm.
was, and for a little kid, it was like, whoa, so there
Completely
was
different atmosphere.
it was a different atmosphere. I liked both of them.
Uh-huh.
I liked traveling over there and coming back. You know, that
Yeah.
was good.
Hmm.
But we lived in our little nook. That's good, and you
Hmm.
can always go and visit the family one. Um, but my point of saying that is that back then, that trip did seem longer distance in terms
Hmm.
of, there's nothing around until you get to where you're sort of getting towards the. But today, the distance, in a way, is even longer and slower, because each
Yeah.
street is a freaking stop, is a traffic, light.
Well, not only that, but you've got 100 times more people trying to go the same direction.
Mhm.
So yeah, and the infrastructure just hasn't kept up. I mean,
Did you see the photo, the after?
yeah, I was looking at both of them. They were completely different. They took all those buildings and just bulldozed them, and it's one building. You know.
Oh, no, no, wait, I'm sorry. The I did look at that as well. The two are the same angle,
Yeah,
more or
it was
less.
the same block. Yeah.
But the first, or the older picture,
Hmm.
the lens and the way he positioned it, one built for some reason, one building that was way further, in reality it's way further across the street,
Yeah.
looked like it was all on the same street for some reason, with the lensing
Yeah.
effect of that older picture. But in the new picture, it's splayed out
Right.
more wider, so it's more accurate in terms of its spacing with Google,
Right.
in a sense, than with the older one. But it looked more active back in the day,
Oh yeah. Oh
or at
yeah.
least more things were open, stores were open and
Hmm.
such.
Hmm.
So anyway, so that's what I was trying to get at, that you, to get from one place to the other due to the
Hmm.
traffic.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's a, because you could go to the beach back then
Hmm.
quickly. Oh,
Yeah.
we're all going to the beach. Let's
Hmm.
go. Today, it's like,
It's
uh,
an ordeal. Yeah. 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 You remember, got to remember, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I know that. I mean, we could be out kind of in the rural area or we could be in the big city and just like that.
yeah.
And when, you've got 100,000 people all wanting to go to for instance, a football game, and we just happen to be going to San Francisco at the same time there's a football game. You're talking, I mean, a major traffic jam because everybody's trying to get to the stadium. We're not. We just happen to have the bad luck of going when everybody's trying to get there.
That's such a beautiful city, dude.
So it used to be. It really used to be. It used to be one of my favorite places to go
Dude,
because just the range of things to do there. You know.
I I couldn't believe when we went into San Francisco.
Hmm.
I couldn't believe how awesome it
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
Everything from the temperature, it was pretty freaking cold, but it added to the just now that is a city,
Yeah. It used to be.
I mean,
It used to
that
be.
is a city.
You probably got in on the tail end of it.
Well, I went in 2000 or 2001
Yeah, you got in at
something.
about the tail end of it, of the good era. Now I wouldn't go on a bet.
I did see one disturbing thing. Well, yeah, but I did see one disturbing thing. I've told you before,
Hmm.
but through one street, I saw a man walking backwards, and I was like, and it almost felt
That's
like some sort of.
that's San Francisco. That's San Francisco.
I
I
was
could
like,
tell you stories that would curl your hair, straighten it, and then recurl it. But you know,
in
let
any
me
event, it
let
was.
me let me jump over here because Jamie Page had to dive in on this here. He said national average for fuel in the USA in 1982, the year I was born, was 234. Now is okay, that was in the USA. In 82?
Let me make a.
I
Well, go
don't
ahead,
um
because I
in
want to say something
82.
about that. I remember
Um
as a kid it being 90, 80 something or 90 cents.
yeah, cuz right here in 1982 it's saying that it's at 91 cents a gallon.
I remember my dad giving me a buck in the
Hmm.
80s,
Yeah.
throughout the 80s, and a gas can, and
Hmm.
saying, "Go over to the gas station and get me some fuel for the what do you call it, the,
Lawnmower.
the lawnmower."
I can remember my dad giving me a quarter and the 1 gallon gas can and telling me to get some gas and bring him the change because he didn't want me to go to the store buy penny candy by myself.
That's
So
great.
yeah, it's all relative, man. Um, but yeah, we got. So I brought Jamie's up too. He was born in '82. So just comparing and contrasting you and Jamie. Okay. Now Jamie's in the UK, and they do have some UK prices here. Okay. In 1975, a the average house price in the UK was £11,000. Okay. The average price of a house in the US was $39,000.
And when
That was in 75.
I think it was, I guess within that.
So when I look at 82 in the UK, the average house price was £23,000. And the average price of a house in 82 was $82,000.
That wasn't the case necessarily.
Well, that
I
was
don't know that.
the average nationwide.
Yeah,
Okay.
averages are averages.
Right. So then we get into my old butt. Um, the house average cost of a new home was 12,500, and again, price of a gallon of gas was 27 cents. Now here's the fun part of this though, because people hear, "Oh wow, average cost of a new home was only $12,000." Average annual income was $5,000 in 1961, $5,300.
That's why when
And
my great grandmother used to give me pennies when we
mhm,
visited her,
mhm.
it was like,
Oh yeah, they meant something.
I mean, to me, I didn't know even the purpose of money. I mean, I knew the purpose of money, but like
Mhm.
my parents did all the purchasing, so I was like, what am I gonna do with this pocket full of change? When I was really little,
Yeah.
she would say, or she would hand me the pennies,
Mhm.
and Dad would say, "Put it in your pocket, son. That's money." And I was
Mhm.
like, I don't see an Incredible Hulk figurine
Yeah.
anywhere near here.
Right.
you know, like,
Come on, let's get with the program here. I want comic books, not these copper things.
yeah.
But yeah, I remember. Good grief! Um, if you got a nickel, you could wipe that candy store out, or so you thought.
Not in
You know,
my time. In my
you
time, you
could
could get
you
a
could
gum.
go you could come home with a small bag full of candy. You really could. You could come home with a small bag full of candy because there were still lots of little individual candies that were still 2 and 3 for a penny.
Um, did you was I'm trying to remember. Well, I can't remember past my time, but
Mhm.
did you have in your era, um, in your era of horse and buggy,
Way back
rock
when?
rock candy
Oh yeah.
or rock candy, right?
Well,
pop
Pop
rock,
Rocks.
pop rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, Pop Rocks. I first saw Pop Rocks here. I want to say it was 79 or 80, something like
Okay,
that.
so it came a little bit later.
Yeah. Well, it's a small town. I mean, we didn't even get TV shows until later. So, yeah,
Did you know that
things.
Sweetwater, Florida, is
Mhm.
where jawbreakers were invented? No, just kidding.
Mhm.
Jawbreakers were around, right?
Mhm.
In
Oh,
during
yeah.
your time.
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah. A lot of these go back to the 20s and 30s. But Pop Rocks was fairly new. And it didn't take long for that rumor to get going about Pop Rocks that what was that kid on the Life cereal commercial? Hey, he likes it. Hey, Mikey. That kid ate a package of Pop Rocks and then drank a Coke and his stomach exploded.
Oh
It
yeah.
was about a week after they came out that rumor started spreading around and we heard it. And suddenly, kids' parents wouldn't let them have Pop Rocks, which was fine with me, because I was 17, 18 years old. I didn't have any competition. I'll buy them all.
Um, did you have childhood stuff or toys or cards like
Mhm.
baseball and whatnot that you collected or something similar that once you got at a certain age, well, let me just finish and then what at a certain age you got older and you said to yourself something to the effect of, I'll just pass it on to someone younger in the family or something, and then now or at some point you thought back, man, if I had those around.
I didn't really get into collecting much. About the closest I got to collecting anything was I go in these little spurts, I call them. I'll get really into football, and then I want to collect football memorabilia. And I can remember having those little itty bitty plastic football helmets that for all the teams in the NFL that you put a quarter in the machine and you turn the handle and a little plastic acorn would come out and you pop it
Yeah.
out. You put the little decals on it. I had Hot Wheels cars that were all of the NASCAR when I was hot and heavy into NASCAR racing. But other than that, I never collected like baseball cards or football cards, and nothing I collected really had much of a
Did
value.
you ever buy a pack of baseball cards?
No, no.
No.
The closest I came was I bought when em, Empire Strikes Back came out. I bought a couple of packs of Star Wars cards just because my buddy was hot and heavy into it. I mean, he was as nerdy as I am about some things. He was super nerd. And if it had that Star Wars logo on it or any association to Star Wars at all, he had to have it. And he's like, "Yeah, look at this. Check it out. This is cool. Check it out. This is cool. This, that, the other." I'm like, okay, it's a dime. What the hell? So I bought a couple with change back from something. I don't remember what it was. And it didn't take me long to go, what the hell am I doing with my life? There's so many other things to spend money on. This is ridiculous. So I gave them all to him, and that was about it. So I
Um,
guess if you were going to say passing something on to somebody, that would be the closest thing I've ever done.
when I was a kid, my cousin, when he got older, he gave me a shoebox
Uh-huh.
full of baseball and football cards, and
Oh,
they were from
okay,
like the
cool.
'60s. Some of them were like from the '30s.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah, some of them might be worth some money. Same with comics.
well, I don't know whatever happened to that damn box because at some point I got older. You get interested in other things like
Yeah.
girls, and then all of that sort of doesn't have the same spark to it.
Yeah.
Only later you reflect and man, but yeah, a shoebox full of
Hmm.
freaking like if I could only have that now. But I also collected a lot of like things like GI Joes and whatnot, and
Hmm.
even like Nintendo games. And the reason I bring this up is that I passed that on to my cousin
Hmm.
and the GI Joes like a long time back, and now and the same thing he gave them away as well when he
Yeah.
got older. And
Yeah.
so the thing is that now those toys are going for a lot of money.
Well, yeah, because boys are rough on their toys. We tend to tear them up. I mean, Tonka trucks, all rusted up hulks and everything. Ain't hardly any yellow paint on them anymore. Boys' bicycles, boys beat their stuff up. We played with them rough. So some of them are not worth a, a nickel, but others are worth some good money because not many survived us, you know?
I used to play with those GI Joes in the yard, and I would bury them
Yeah.
in the dirt. And my friends would come over, and we'd have all sorts of um, battles on the
Hmm.
front lawn,
Yeah.
and we'd be, and who knows where that stuff came. But the point is that those toys going back in time, like today,
Hmm.
are actually like collector items that
Hmm.
would fetch a pretty penny.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess the last thing on that theme that I'll just say is that to get back to your list, which we've diverged quite a
Well,
lot.
no, no, no. It was supposed to be something to spark conversation, and
So
I think it has.
I pulled, yeah, it has. I pulled a picture from my drive that I had scanned, and it was me as a little kid standing in my bedroom with all the toys and stuff around there. And I proceeded to look up the different toys and see if I could find them on eBay and this and that. And I found a
Oh, okay.
bunch of them um, going for whatever amount here
Hmm.
and there. Even a Mickey Mouse thing that now it's called vintage.
Hmm.
Like there's a
Yep.
bunch of stuff like that, from the well. But funny enough, I had a poster on the wall of the Marlboro Man,
Hmm.
and I was able to, and I kind of remember that it was a black and white one. The picture is faded, so it's kind of hard to tell. But
Yeah.
it was like a pinup of the
Yeah.
Marlboro Man with his cowboy hat and rope and all that.
Uh-huh.
And so I kept, those were the images that I,
Mhm.
who knows what psychological, but those were the, so in my mind, the world, there's cowboys, there's Lee Majors, because I had a picture of Lee Majors for some reason.
Mhm.
Well, because my mom put it there. These were the iconic things, but at the same time, I had a Raggedy Ann statuette sitting on the
Mhm.
table to 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 calm the
Oh, yeah.
savage male
Mhm.
so it was like the '70s thing. But the poster
It
was,
was earlier than that.
what's that?
It was earlier than that because I had a Raggedy Ann and a Raggedy Andy when I was a little kid too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Um, so but the poster, I looked it up and found
Mhm.
the poster,
Mhm.
and it fetches like 114 bucks now,
Wow.
which may not seem, but it's just a piece of freaking paper, dude.
Yeah, but you paid what, $2 for it at the most?
She probably just pulled it from one of those magazines, and it was a pinup
Yeah.
fold them out type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian Neighbor, welcome aboard, Brian. Whoop, there he is.
Well,
We ran so much money through the spokes of our bikes, baseball cards. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, but I didn't use baseball cards or anything. I used my parents' playing cards. They had a special deck for a game called Pinochle. I've never played Pinochle. They
I've
did,
heard that.
but there was a special deck of cards for Pinochle, and I guess it just had certain cards of certain suits or something like that. I don't know. And I'd run in the house and I'd grab a deck of cards. And my mother, you better not be grabbing my Pinochle deck. I'm not, because they knew we didn't know how to play Pinochle. There was one deck of cards that my brother and I could play with, and half of those were missing because they ended up in the spokes.
Mhm.
And that was, our motor. Did you ever do that? Take a clothespin and put the card so that it stuck into the spokes of your bicycle, and then clothespin it on?
No, I didn't do that. That wasn't a thing. I mean, it might have been a thing. I just wasn't exposed to it. But I will say that during that era of learning how to ride bike as a little kid,
Mm-hmm.
I had training wheels on my bike, and I remember it was a big like thing to remove the training wheels.
Yeah.
And so my dad out there in the front yard or in the sidewalk, I would go back and forth and he says, "Okay, we're gonna take the training wheels off." And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Whoa, there's balance issues going on here." And then all of a sudden, after he like directed me and I got the confidence because it's all that, right?
Yeah.
I managed to do it on my own and it became a thing. Well, funny enough, years later, like recently when I started riding bike again,
Mm-hmm.
my balance was all screwed because I'm
Yeah.
an older guy now. And when I got on, I said, "Damn, this requires a lot of self discipline." I was thinking in my mind, like it really does.
Mm-hmm.
You may think, "Oh, it's like riding, it's like getting on a bike," and what's the saying? It's like,
It's like riding a bicycle. Once you learn, you never forget.
right. Well, that may be true, but it's not exactly true. The balance issue. Well, in any event, I've 'cause I used to take sharp
Oh
corners,
yeah.
and now I'm like doing signals so the traffic lanes and stuff
Yeah.
like you know. Um, dude, did you freeze or is it me?
I froze.
Oh, okay, you're back. Um,
This happened yesterday too,
to
or
you.
maybe it was early this morning to me. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, it was earlier this morning. It happened. So.
so just to wrap up the bike thing, but what happened during my bike?
Hmm.
Like I became
Hmm.
independently on bike is that I started seeing kids one day riding frickin' skateboards,
Hmm.
and I was like, well, wait a second. I just got my bike thing on, and even though kids did the bike continuously, there was this other cool thing. So I had to have a freaking skateboard. I
Hmm.
was never really good in it. Like all these kids
Me.
were doing all sorts of exciting tricks in front of me,
Hmm.
and I was like, how do it just wasn't a thing that I did. And but all these other things started coming into play, which I mean, skateboards were around before, but the point is that it really got hopping in the 80s because there were like these iconic it just happened like that. But what really got me is that one day because and by the way, rock and roll was the theme music.
Hmm.
It wasn't anything else. It wasn't disco. It wasn't nothing. It was rock and roll in terms of what we were growing up on. But then one day, these same rock, a few of them,
Hmm.
I'm walking down the road to my friend's house, and there's this piece of cardboard on the ground. They're playing rap and they're breakdancing. And I was
Yep. That
thinking,
was the '80s version of disco. You
things
had the
progress.
break dancing and all that other stuff. We had the disco. So yeah.
It was I was taken aback because I thought we really had a good thing going with this rock and roll. I mean, we're just studying the music of Ozzy as a little kid, and that he belonged to another band just prior, and now you guys are doing this to me, my friends.
And
It was shocking.
I was listening to that band prior, and then all of a sudden here's Casey and the Sunshine Band, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? You know? So yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, we had skateboards growing up as well, but they sucked. They were nothing like the skateboards that of the 80s and 90s or today. Nothing like it. They were open bearings, they weren't even sealed bearings. Half of them had metal wheels. The other half had composition wheels, kind of like the roller skates you would get at the roller rink.
Yeah.
And so you either had these real loud metal steel wheels, or you had the composition wheels that got chewed up within like 4 months and you had to go buy new ones. And you had to oil the bearings before you rode it. Otherwise, you know, and Lord help you if you got a little piece of gravel, if you hit a piece of gravel because you were flying.
I ended up with a skateboard, but you could adapt it. So we
Mm,
would get new wheels, we would get
mm,
new everything like hardware. And I remember getting the sandpaper grip or whatnot for the top of it.
for the deck, yeah.
And I remember going and picking out neon green sandpapery stuff.
Hmm.
And the bottom of it was like some skeletons and stuff with
Hmm.
neon. And I loved that skateboard. And I used it a lot.
Hmm.
But I was never good in terms of exciting tricks.
Well, right about the time those skateboards got real popular or started to get real popular was about the time I got my driver's license, and I didn't give a damn about bicycles or skateboards after that.
At that
I
point, you can't really.
I had
It's
my license, and that was, it's real difficult to date a girl on a skateboard. So I had my Ford Maverick, and I was a happy guy.
um.
So,
In any event, so what's next on your list?
oh, what you brought up, whether you wanted to or not, you did happen to mention the price of eggs,
Hmm.
and I probably won't get into it because I'm not seeing what they were in 1975, but I can tell you in 1961, a dozen eggs was 30 cents. So, but again, we were also making $5,000 a year. So,
Yeah, that is a difference.
uh huh. And for Jamie, doesn't say. It doesn't say. Okay, never mind. But there are some of the major news stories. Um, the year that you were born, 1975, Sony introduced the Betamax and JVC introduced the VHS tape.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean,
We built this city on rock and roll.
uh huh. Um, one of the very first blockbuster films, Jaws, was released in June of 75.
My dad took me to see. I think it was Jaws. When did Jaws 2 come out? Hold on, let me see. Because I'm trying to.
I don't know.
Let me see. Jaws 2, 1978.
78?
So,
Okay.
so I went to see.
So you were 3 when that came out.
Well, no, I'm going to say I went to see either. Well, I was very young. I went to see either Jaws 2
Mhm.
or Jaws 3D, which was part 3. I think it was Jaws 2. And then
Okay.
and my dad would take me to movies like that. Hell, we saw um, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Yeah.
whenever that came out. I don't know what. Let me see. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark,
I,
1981. Okay, so that was
I
I was 7,
yeah, you were 6.
6.
So I'm so old, I remember that it was just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it was no Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was just Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, I'm just saying that now.
Yeah.
But I
Well, no,
remember
but that's
going.
what they have retitled it. That's what it is now. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, I remember at 6 years old
Hmm.
impressions that you would think, well, maybe you wouldn't, but it was that. I don't know, man. It's the thing. You go to the movie theaters and with your dad,
Uh-huh.
and you're watching all the. It's a big deal because it's a huge screen.
Hmm.
You're a little kid. You haven't. You only have like 6 years under your belt,
Right.
and you're watching this bigger than life thing with music and explosion.
And sharks.
Yeah, it's like everything, everything. So I wouldn't get in the water, dude.
Hmm. Well, they called Jaws the first blockbuster film, but when it was released, it became the highest grossing film of all time. That's how popular it was. And I remember the mania, shark mania. I mean, kids were wearing shark t shirts. You had a shark tooth necklace. I mean, kid 6 year olds were going to school with a Jaws lunchbox, you know. I mean, shark, 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 all over the place. It was crazy.
Did you have a tin lunchbox when you were growing up? I did.
Oh yeah, I had several. I had several.
Is that something that kids still do?
They're plastic now. I don't know how popular they are, but
Back then, it was a fashion statement for kids.
yeah, it was, you know, and you were judged on your lunchbox.
Yeah.
You really were. You know, if you went with one of the latest TV shows or one of the latest movies, and as a guy, if it had kind of a macho image, you were all right. But if you were in fifth grade and you still had your Hair Bear Bunch lunchbox from second grade, you were like, oh man, what's the matter with you? Why don't you get something new? You know, something like that, you know.
I still have. Oh, you want to talk about? I still have that my mother and then my grandmother conserved, and then my aunt passed it on to me.
Mhm.
The cup I used to drink out of when I was little, which
Wow.
was just a mug made out of
Uh-huh.
plastic, and I forget it was a clown. It was a
Mhm.
clown. Um, and then I put Scooby Doo stickers that were. Do you remember those stickers back in the day that were? I guess it was plastic, but it was filled with a little bit of cushion.
Yeah, the vinyl puffy stickers. Yeah, we had the old paper ones that peeled off after a week.
So I still have that mug, and with the thing, and we're talking about four over 4 decades.
Yeah.
Um, and I even have, funny enough, you want to see how crazy? Um, in a album, photo album of my like baptism and or
Mhm.
this or that or birth or whatever, my belly button in a
Oh
frickin'
geez.
in a frickin' envelope.
Okay. If you say so. Wow.
Isn't that a tradition for you?
Nope. Nope.
Wait, let me ask the question. Which ethnicities save their belly buttons for memory? I said that wrong.
Umbilical cord, maybe.
No, it was s- save the remarkable biodiversity of belly buttons. um, Bacteria species. Oh crap! Scientists find why belly button cultural views of mid midriff.
Innies and outies, attorneys at law.
Belly button keepsakes, a symbol of connection to culture. Indigenous women, by sharing the cultural practice of keeping and honoring their child's umbilical cord
Yep.
stump. Oh, goodness.
Hmm.
In any event, we didn't have the umbilical cord, but we had like little belly button whatnot. And it's funny because there's a movie called Meet the or Meet the Folk. I can't say it because it sounds like another word. Meet the
Hmm.
Falkers
Hmm.
with Ben Stiller. I don't know if you ever saw it.
No, but I think I saw part of it years ago.
There's a
No,
part.
I take that back. That was Meet the Parents I saw
Meet the
years
Parents
ago.
is funny as heck, and part two
Mhm,
was okay,
mhm,
but not as good as part one. But in part two, there's a belly button, or there's a foreskin
mhm,
that was saved, and they're all having what do you call this, fondue,
mhm,
and it's the first time they're all meeting each other, and they're looking through. Oh, look at the baby pictures of Greg. Greg
mhm,
was Ben Stiller in the movie.
mhm.
He's gonna get married to the girl,
Yeah.
and as they're flipping, something happens, and the table and the book sort of flies up, and the foreskin that the mother had saved from the circumcision as a key, as a memento, flies and lands inside the
Fondue pot.
fondue thing,
Yeah.
and they're all sitting there with their little forks looking at it, and it's a joke within the thing. It's funny if you're watching the movie, maybe not so
Uh-huh.
much me saying it.
Yeah. Well, um, only a little bit. So, let's see. Quick subject change here. Hey, Saturday Night Live debuted in 1975,
Oh wow, with the
and
original and better cast.
with the original "Not Ready for Prime Time" players.
I mean,
Chevy Chase and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and all them guys. Yeah. Um, let's see. I'm trying to find other nifty stuff. The popular TV programs of the time were the
Starsky and Hutch.
$6 million Man,
There you go.
Kojak, The Jeffersons, All in the Family, Maud, Good Times, MASH, and The Carol Burnett Show.
All of those I saw growing up.
Yep. Same here. Same here.
All of those I saw growing up, and it was awesome.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was freaking awesome. You know what was a game changer?
That.
I've told you before in episodes way back when, but
Hmm.
sometimes in the 80s, sometime in the 80s, we got a new channel, and it was like channel 33 or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And late in the evening, one of the best feelings was being a kid on the weekends
Hmm.
and turning on the TV and laying back and just vegetating while you're watching whatever. I like that a lot.
Hmm.
And it's late at night. It's almost like you're supposed to be sleeping, but you've got a TV in your room, so we're gonna watch a little bit later. And there was this thing that came on, um, which was, well, not this thing. It was wrestling,
Okay.
and I just, well, that was one of the '80s things that really blew up as well. Like like the WWF and all this and that.
Hmm.
But sometime later, they adapted the theme and brought in the gorgeous ladies of Glow wrestling.
I vaguely remember that. The gorgeous ladies of wrestling, Glow Girls.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
dude,
vaguely remember that.
I was, I was taken.
How old were you?
I don't remember when that came out. I could have been. It could have been mid '80s
Okay.
or late '80s or maybe mid '80s. I don't. Wait, let me
Mhm.
see. We might as well. When was the first episode of the Gorgeous Ladies of Glow Wrestling? 1985.
85. So you would have been 10 years old.
It aired in '86, September of
Okay. So
from
you're
Los
looking at 11.
from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
boy, oh boy, it was a sight to witness. They were bikini, or not bikini, but whatever their wrestling suits were, they
Hmm.
were. I mean, it was great. Um,
I'm trying to think. I think the closest thing we had to that was roller derby. And
I'm gonna tell you a story that you won't believe.
yeah, not every one of them was pretty. Some of them were, but not all of them were. I think that's about it. Well, Dean Martin and the Gold Diggers, but variety shows and things of that nature.
Yeah,
So
it was good stuff, dude.
we want to talk about technology.
Sure.
1975, Motorola obtained the patent for the first mobile telephone,
Hell,
and we've been going downhill ever since. Oh, triple whammy. Bill Gates and Paul Allen developed a basic program for the Altair 8800. Then, at the same year, the name Microsoft, which was short for microcomputer software, and that's MICRO hyphen SOFT, and then the name Microsoft became a registered trademark. And the Altair 8800 microcomputer was released to the public. So he got into it early.
that's crazy stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Well, it took about 50 years for it to become what it has become.
Um, it was, I would say, let's see, this is 1975. The first real computer that wasn't a toy like the Commodore VIC 20 or something like that was probably 83, 84, something in around that area, maybe a little bit later than that.
But I'm
That I
suggesting,
mean, out for the masses.
well, that's true. My dad got the Commodore
Hmm.
when it came out, really.
Hmm.
But I'm talking about the distinction I'm making is where yes, it's available. It was available for the masses, but the interest level wasn't across the board ubiquitous.
Hmm.
Um, where you don't need to know the back end.
Right.
Um, that sounds like the beginning of a bad Las Vegas corral story.
Yeah,
Um,
it could be.
but the point is that now it's such
Right.
a for any person, they don't need to know anything other than
Right.
press this button
Right.
slightly.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I can remember about the time that shift really started happening. It really started happening in the late 80s and early 90s, because before that, um, it was pretty much the only people who had computers were nerds who wanted to learn how to program them. And they got all excited if you could get your computer to play the musical scale. You know, if you got a do re mi fa sol la ti do out of it, you were hot stuff. But then as software got it more and more sophisticated, and people saw what you could do with the graphics, and then games, then they really started taking off. And then with the internet, that was when it exploded. And the internet went public, I want to say in 94, but I may be wrong on that.
I didn't see a point to the computer. My reference points was in school, we had a computer lab,
Mm-hmm.
and I just saw it like, why are we doing all this math
Yeah.
or pictorial things when you could do it on paper?
Mm-hmm.
I found it at the time like, yeah, it's cool, but at the same time, it's like, what else? And my dad that would use it to like, look, son, I just a song. It was interesting, but
Yeah.
he would type in the and then the song would play.
Hmm.
Or writing out stuff like what you would use a type. Why not use a typewriter?
Yeah.
Was my
Well, I did understand that part. The reason not to use a typewriter is because it's easier to hit a backspace P on a keyboard and type the correct letter than it is to get the white out and
oh, that's
do
true.
that. And
But like as a
so
matter of
I understood that, but I didn't really see the purpose for them other than playing games.
well, yeah, it wasn't really until but the
Hmm.
people that adopted it early,
Uh-huh.
they were that curious and
Hmm.
whatever else. But it wasn't until 2005 or 2006
Hmm.
that I even got a computer for myself. And the only reason I got it wasn't for the internet, wasn't for anything.
Hmm.
It was because I heard about a hardware slash software that you could use a computer in order to have so many musical tracks to record on.
Yeah.
And it was basically a studio in your computer.
Hmm.
And that's what turned me on to computers for myself.
Yeah.
And it was the end of the story there because, frankly,
Hmm.
it was magical, dude, at
Well,
that point.
what got me into it was computer aided drafting and design. I took a correspondence course to learn how to use AutoCAD, and there was a compact Presario computer um, that somebody decided to return off a layaway. They never picked it up, and they got refunded on it and bought a different one. And that came back from the layaway into the store, into the PX there in Hawaii. And they marked it down to $4.99, and I sold a guitar to buy it. And I was introduced to AutoCAD and the PC the same week of 1997, and here we are. So I wanted to get into designing and drafting on the computer, and I didn't know it would lead to where I am now, but it did through a circuited route, but still, you know,
There's still a connection there that's very direct at the same time.
there is, there is.
Um, the computer is an amazing thing,
Hmm.
and people pouring all their knowledge into it is an amazing thing. And it just so
Hmm.
happens that it'll end up being possibly
Yeah.
the Matrix dystopian nightmare that we might all not want to occur.
Well, you never can tell. I mean, stranger things have happened. But on the lower end of the technology scale, Bic launched its first disposable razor in 1975.
Oh wow.
And
It
now
was
look
all
at,
downhill for shaving from there because boy, they
yeah,
suck.
yeah.
I mean, you can slice your finger or your chin,
Yeah,
but you can't get those darn hairs off your face.
yep. Okay, here, let's look at 1975 versus 1961. 1975, cost of a gallon of gas was 44 cents. Okay. In 61, it was 27 cents. The average new car in 75 was $4,250. In 1961, it was $2,800.
Sure.
And I'm only going through the things here that they have in common, because like they have some things here that are not even listed in 1961. The average cost of a new house in 75 was $39,000. And in 61, it was $12,000. But the average income per year was $14,000 in 75. And it was 5,000 in 61. So,
We've been
everything is
getting
relative.
we've been getting averagely screwed
Hmm.
for decades now.
Yeah.
We've been getting averagely screwed.
Hmm.
And in a continual basis for decades now. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'm being obviously, I'm being, whatever the word is, facetious or
Yeah.
something to that effect.
Facetious.
It's incredible, Mark.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um.
What I
See.
will not abide by is $12 McDonald's frickin' meal. Sorry, done,
Well.
done. I mean, in a rare,
Hmm.
but no, not interested.
What?
Eggs, done.
Yeah. What can you say? I mean, you're the
Not
one with
done.
the priority. You have your priorities. So
My
that's what.
priority is that. Well, you know how um older dudes back in the day would say, that's an outrage. Well, you said that before.
Mhm.
I think your dad mentioned something to that effect when he saw the price of something.
Yeah. 39 cents per gallon of gas. He thought that was criminal.
Yeah, and but there's a reason that that happens is that people continue on, but and they remember the key pricings
Uh huh.
that
Well,
seem reasonable.
but that was his thing about it was because that was this one particular gas station, but you went 5 miles down the road and it was 25, 26, 27. It was just that one particular gas station. And it was a Shell station, and he never bought Shell gasoline after that. Never bought it again.
I
Yeah,
used to get paid my
we
my
carry
min
grudges.
me too, dude, in that way, in that sense.
Mhm.
I will avoid an item if it gets to that level for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that doesn't exist anymore. Yes, I know there's something that exists that's called eggs,
Mhm.
but they might as well.
Well, I don't know about you there, but eggs here have come back down to where they were before pandemic.
No, but I got so used to not buying them that I'm like,
Oh,
I,
all right.
I, I you know, um, yeah, just a bunch of stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what you're gonna do with that? Sorry, lost a customer.
Yep.
Not happening.
As far as technology in 1961, some of this is pretty cool stuff. Okay. I know you're thinking, oh, you learned how to dip the wick in the wax twice and then the candle would be brighter, right? No. May 5th, 1961, the US launched its first man into space, Alan Shepard on Freedom 7. Also in 61, President Kennedy asks Congress for 531 million to put a man on the moon before the end of the 60s. So that was pretty big things.
Yeah.
But on the other end of that spectrum, IBM introduced the Selectric typewriter with the ball instead of the individual little keys that tapped up. They had the
That's an important one.
oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
Excuse me.
that's an amazing thing.
Let's look at some of the popular TV shows. Wagon Train, Bonanza, Gunsmoke. The top three were westerns. Then Perry Mason, Red Skelton, Andy Griffith, Candid Camera, My Three Sons, The Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and Mr. Ed.
Not bad.
Oh, it was a simpler time. Wilbur.
Yeah, but that's. I grew up watching those reruns, a lot of those,
Mhm.
and they were fun.
Yeah, they were.
They were fun in the context of my time because you're looking at a time previous. I love that idea. I
Mhm.
love that little play on eras.
Yeah. And a lot of those TV shows are still popular. You can get them on the cable channels and what have you,
I saw
TV
some
Land and what have you.
I saw some kids on the internet in a comment section saying, "I remember that was back in the day, back when I'm
Yeah.
back when I was a kid, and then he tells his age, and it was like 2000,
Yeah.
and I'm like, back in the day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it
Sorry.
is, it is back in the day.
Well, to them it is. It's 24 years ago, 2000.
It's
So,
it's 24 years is back in the day, even though to me it's just yesterday. In reality, I can say it's just yesterday. It feels like, I know it's not, but the mind.
mhm,
I think of the 80s. I had so much input going on
yeah.
that to me it really registered. So when they say the 80s,
Yeah.
I'm not looking at the 80s the way they look at it's like the 60s. I
Mhm.
look at the 60s probably way different than you do.
Well, yeah, because it was, several years before you were born.
Mhm.
So, in much the same way I look at the 50s, you know, some of the stuff was transferring into the 60s, but not a lot of it. In much the same way that some of the 60s was transferring into the 70s. But by the time you were born, a lot of that was gone, you
Mm,
know.
well, I don't know what was or what wasn't. I can't say, but I
Hmm.
can tell you that by the time I'm getting into listening to the radio a lot,
Hmm.
there was an oldie station, and
Hmm.
primarily they played 50s music as oldies,
Yeah.
but they used to say oldies music from the 50s and 60s,
Hmm.
so that it started blending in 60s as oldies even back 40 years ago,
Hmm.
dude,
And it
or
did when it did
30.
when it did when I was growing up as well, because you had like there was a little cutoff right about the time the surfer music came in. Beach Boys are played, early Beach Boys, Surfing Safari, Surfing USA, things like that. They're played on the oldie stations. But the newer stuff from like Pet Sounds, some of it is, but not all of it. You'll hear that mainly on the soft rock channels. But you will hear some certain Beach Boys tunes on the oldie stations. So it was about 60, I want to say 64, maybe 65 was the cutoff. Because you hear Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, you hear early Beatles, you don't hear early Rolling Stones usually. But
Yeah,
predominantly it is music, it is the rock and roll from the 50s. Chubby Checker and Bill Haley and the Comets and Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers and like that. But and that was when I was growing up. So I'm talking about in the 60s. You would hear that on the oldie station. There was no such thing as classic rock. You had modern pop and you had oldies. So,
I'm
and then
telling you, dude, that was some good stuff anyhow, because I liked it all. I liked going back in time.
mhm.
50s to me was bad to the bone.
In many ways, I agree, but I don't know that I would have wanted to live back then. I don't know. I think I don't know. I think I was born in the right time. I've had a lot of fun,
Well,
and
you
I
were born
really
in the
have
right
no complaints.
you
So,
were born in the right time, because
well,
there's no other way around that one.
well, truth, but you know how some people say I was born in the wrong decade. I should have been born in the 50s or I should have been born in the 40s. Well, we see the good stuff, but we don't see the bad stuff, like lack of antibiotics and stuff.
I mean,
So,
yeah.
yeah, in fact, Jim kind of mentioned that up here. Let me go back and find it again here. He's like, all the good old days. Um, oh, let me find it. Yeah, there
Ooh,
we
ah,
go.
ooh,
Ah,
ah.
the good old days. We had so many more things then. Diphtheria, polio, yeah, German measles, you know, exactly.
Not everybody got that stuff, though.
No, not everybody got that, but it was a crapshoot.
Yeah, but I mean, in context of, well, then again, you could say
Mhm.
at least we weren't in the 16, 15, and 1600s with the the bubonic
Plague, yeah,
plague,
that's true. You
because we
know,
could say that too. I mean, it's like
Mhm. What
So
would
the
it be
50,
like back in the 1500s? Oh, it would be hellish because, if the guards with the spears didn't kill you, the septicemia would have. So,
whole villages and cities and towns
yeah.
where my ancestors paternally and
Mhm.
other branches, but I've studied more the paternal, or have there's been more
Yeah.
easy access. Whole villages were freaking wiped out, dude.
25% of the population of Europe was killed. 25% of the entire population. And there were many, many towns and villages that were just decimated, just gone.
Just
The
bam.
structures remained, and that was it.
I
So,
often wonder if that's the reason that, because I'd have to check exactly, but our records from that part of my family
mhm,
and even the whole population begins somewhere in the 1500s,
mhm,
where you can see plenty of records. But prior to that, wasteland. I've ever
yeah,
since, I've ever since, and I think it might be the plague, but I've since then, better said, found that they had this thing called the Council of Trent,
mhm,
in Rome, and they debated for like 2 years or something, and they said from now on, all churches will have information organized in the proper manner of X, Y, and Z. And from that point on, maybe due to, and you have to keep the record, and I don't know this, and that. And from that point on, records abound. But
yeah.
prior to that, so I wonder if it's a combination of now it's a proper record keeping situation, or is it that the plague wiped out everybody and the priests, and there was just simply nobody left around until they repopulated it?
Well, I'm
Like,
sure there are many, many, many reasons for it. But I mean, who's to say what happened when? Because, a lot of those areas were pretty lawless all over Europe, you know.
I mean, there was nobody around.
Exactly. And maybe that area hadn't really been settled. Who knows?
Well, there's whole towns
Yeah.
or village or hamlets. Bless you. One more.
I
Oh,
usually do it in fives, but I think it was easy this time. I'm fighting seasonal allergies. That's why I keep muting my microphone to sneeze and cough and clear my throat and what have you. But
well, if I mute mine,
mhm.
I'm sneezing too, but I had a lot of cabbage.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, my sneeze is from the nose. So, man,
Um,
I feel another one stuck back there, but it ain't ready yet. So,
but sneeze,
yeah. Okay.
but sneeze. I love it.
Man,
Sorry, but sneeze. I'm sorry.
I don't know what the neighbors have been planning, but this is getting worse. Man. Mm.
Oh yeah, we're getting into the season anyhow.
Hmm. Yeah,
It gets wild.
I do a seasonal allergy thing every spring and every fall. And Linda's doing it too, as a matter of fact. So I don't know if it's something we planted out in our yard or if somebody else planted something, but there's something new this year that's really playing hell with my allergies. So, uh, uh, Jim Dockrell. 1976, my parents bought a Grand Le Mans that was more money than the house we lived in that they bought in 65 ish. Yeah, they went shopping for a cauliflower and came back with a car. Should have made that right turn at Albuquerque. I don't know how that works, but I have a
Now,
similar story.
if that's not a title for a psychedelic song, I don't know what is.
Uh,
Cauliflower.
Shopping for a cauliflower, came home with a car.
I can see it. I went out. I could see it, dude. I could actually, yeah, and it's so ridiculous in terms of that it would probably be. I mean, it's no worse a title than I can't even say it live on air with some of the songs that are coming out now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, on a related note to that, I knew some people down in Nevada. I used to service the slot machines in this little bar in downtown Fernley, Nevada. Salute. Um, the owners of the bar, their son ran a body shop in Reno. And the owners had saved up their money and they were going in to buy mom a new Lincoln. They were heading to Reno. They're going to buy her a new Lincoln.
One piece at a time.
No.
Mhm.
And I was talking to the son is telling me this story. He says, "Yeah, they were shopping, they were car shopping all day long. All of a sudden, Kurt's at work at his body shop, and Dad comes in and says, 'Come check out the new wheels.' So he goes outside and he's all excited and everything, but he doesn't see a new Lincoln. What he sees is a big, like 1960s America La France fire truck
Hmm.
with mom sitting in the passenger seat like this, with pissed off written on her face in 17 different languages, you know, just sitting like this. Dad is like, check it out. Ain't this cool? This, that, and the other. Kurt said, I took one look at it, looked at mom, looked at it, looked at mom again, looked over at dad and said, I ain't painting it, and went back into his office. And that was it. She never quite felt the same about that fire truck since. He
That's
bought it, had the bar's logo printed on the doors, and ran it in the parades every year, throwing candy to the kids.
that's cool.
She finally got her Lincoln a year later, but I guess she was on the warpath with him for that entire year until she got her Lincoln.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so going for a cauliflower and coming home with a car, they didn't come home with a fire engine.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Those vehicles back then
Mm.
were tanks.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 7 foot long hood. You could seat 8 people for dinner in the back seat. Yeah. I had
I
a
mean,
uh, I had a 65 Cadillac sedan DeVille 4-door. And that thing was a land yacht. It really was. I could put the kids in the back seat, buckle them in, and the dog, wife and me up front, and between the trunk
was huge.
and the floorboard of the back seat, we could put everything in that car for a week-long camping trip, and we did it.
They were huge, dude. I
Oh
remember that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that was some heavy duty. And the bumpers on those things on the vehicles back then,
Oh yeah.
those were bumpers or were they ramming devices? Because
Uh,
boy,
yeah, all of the above. Because I mean, it was a foot and a half tall and
yeah,
about a quarter of an inch thick,
it was like
and
these chromed out in many cases,
mm-hmm,
like bars of like
yeah,
polished, savagery,
mm-hmm, that's exactly what it was. That's
dude.
exactly what it was. It was a chrome mobile.
My father upgraded to the square
Mm-hmm.
Chevrolet type vehicles that started coming out in the 80s or
Yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
Actually, before that, but whatever. For us, it was new and it had a gold. I forget what exact, but car it was. But the point is, it was more square than the curvy ones that we had back then. and I remember it being futuristic.
Wow.
And now you look back and you're like, no,
Yeah.
not futuristic at all.
No, not at all. Oh man, but you know what? I love that old Cadillac. It rode so smooth. And believe it or not, it wasn't for its size, it damn sure wasn't a gas guzzler. I was shocked it got 20 miles to the gallon
Wow.
for something that big and that heavy. Um Marsh, yeah, I could fit the family next door in the trunk. Absolutely. And not break a sweat because you pushed the lid down and it got to a certain point and the catch grabbed it and pulled it in and latched it for you. The thing
Yeah.
did everything but, rake the front lawn.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
For what they were, the
Mhm.
amount of metal that you got for purchase.
Oh God, the thing weighed 5,000 pounds easily. It'd take a gallon of gas just to open the door. But
True.
I loved that thing. I loved it.
Even closing the doors, I mean, you felt you were in a tank.
Ka-chunk. Exactly. White leather interior, metallic green exterior. Didn't have a vinyl top or anything, just a hard top.
My
But
grandfather had a Le Mans as well
mhm,
with a 350. It said 350 on the side.
mhm,
And boy, that thing was savage, dude.
mhm.
You couldn't touch the pedal.
We look like the Beverly Hillbillies, I tell you what, because I'm not kidding you. I have an outboard motor, a gas tank, and all the equipment for the boat in the trunk with the tent and all this other good stuff, and tie a 14-foot john boat to the roof and go camping. And we did. We had an absolute blast with that thing. It was a big old land yacht, but
Yeah.
smooth as hell.
Um. So I wanted to throw in a movie that I saw
Okay.
before we start to sort of roughly head in the
Wind.
direction.
Okay.
Um. Just to mention it, a movie came out which I haven't seen, but it's called Civil War, and it was a big to do in terms of because it's a dystopian scenario where Texas and for some reason California join up and they go against some other parts of the country. I don't know what the story is, but I just saw the review of it. It's out in theaters or something. And the whole idea is that the U.S. is at war with different factions within its country.
Hmm.
Um, and the whole theme is that four journalists
Hmm.
are driving cross country to interview the president to get his take on what's what, and it's just a dystopian nightmare and stuff. And along the way, they have encounters and whatnot. Um, I like the idea as far as like a Red Dawn type thing, um, but yeah, it just has these implausible apparent scenarios. But what the hell, you know? I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well,
I got nothing more on that in any event, but
for that kind of a premise, there has to be some implausibility. I mean, did you ever see, for instance, it's an old John Carpenter flick called Escape from New York?
I didn't see it.
Kurt Russell.
I know the movie,
Okay.
but and I've seen clips of it,
Hmm.
but I didn't like the. This is another Rolling Stones. I didn't like the cover of it, so I
Oh,
passed on.
geez, you got to see the movie. It's by today's standard, it's kind of cheesy, but for when it came out at the time, it was actually kind of cool. But it basically what has happened is Manhattan, the island, gets purchased by the federal government and it's turned into a maximum security prison.
Okay, yeah,
There are no guards in the prison. There is no administration in the prison. It's completely walled off. There are no supplies brought in. There are no assistance, no aid. And the rules are very simple. Once you go in, you don't come out.
Except for Kirk Russell.
Well, without giving away the movie because you haven't seen it, although it's 40 years old, I don't imagine I'm spoiling it for many people. What
Yeah.
happens is um, Air Force One crash lands in it, and Kurt Russell is sent in to get him out. Okay, get the president out.
Right.
So um, there's a lot of implausibility that goes along with
With the
that
movie.
movie,
Yeah.
but it doesn't detract from the storyline. You know, it's kind of like when they asked Neil deGrasse Tyson if it bothers him that when a spaceship gets blown up in a sci-fi movie, does it bother him that you shouldn't be able to hear the sound because there's no atmosphere to carry the sound? Then he's like, look, I've already accepted the premise that there's a raccoon that can speak English is flying that ship.
So why
The
not?
fact that I can hear the explosion is the least of my worries, you know?
Well, the reason I brought up the movie is that it coincides with a lot of people online
hmm
using that as or something similar
hmm
as a possibility that Americans are fed up and they'll draw lines to that degree. And I find it so, and they use it as a reel to drum up. It's so much bullcrap. There's room for some alternative scenario in any event, but
hmm
it's not the most likely path
No.
because, which I've mentioned before, it's just there's more. There's too many Americans with different life goals at all times
hmm
in order to align with something, unless it comes to an extreme scenario, um, food or whatnot. I don't see it.
Yeah. It's, well, that's why they call it fiction. I mean, it's great to have those intellectual exercises. And the movie may be entertaining as hell. I don't know. I've not seen any press on it or anything like that. And I've not seen any trailers. But, I'm a cultural infidel. So there's movies that's come out in the last 10 years I've never seen. So,
Well, no,
who-
I'm saying that
but,
people in the news or in the
hmm
media, popular media,
hmm
are using it, and it just drums up fear, and people start saying things, and it's a constant blowing up of something that,
yeah, it's a case of overhype,
yeah, like
and
everything else.
we've seen it before. We'll see it again,
Yeah,
you know.
and so that's why I brought it up because I see it
hmm
reflected in people and people, in media
hmm
and people believing that we're
Yeah.
on the brink of some sort of end that can't be furthest from the truth, as far as I see.
Well, you brought up Red Dawn. Um, Red Dawn was one of the few movies back in the day. They took a little bit of a risk when they made that movie, in that they flat out called out the Soviets, and it was the Soviets that invaded America in
Yeah,
that movie.
and the Cubans with the Cubans.
Yes. Prior to that, it was rare that movie would have been seen as a provocation to the Soviets.
Yeah,
Whereas before that, there were always these evildoers, kind of like with James Bond and what was his name? Blofeld. I can't remember the name of the organization that he ran. It were some shady characters, some uber rich evildoers.
right. Yeah,
Whereas with Red Dawn, it was just flat out said the Soviet, decided to invade America. And that scenario, there was some plausibility to that because that was still, the height of the Cold War. And that was still on everybody's mind. So,
I I mean it maybe, but I don't see the United States as, it doesn't seem very likely,
Oh
because
no.
this situation here, we're too big,
Hmm.
there's too many people,
Yeah.
and there's too many weapons in the hands of said people. So it
Well,
kind of, you can't control that many people like that.
even less than, even more than that, more telling than that. Um, there are too many reasonable people who just won't accept that kind of thing. So I don't think it'll get to that.
No, I
I
don't think.
don't think that people would allow it to get to that point.
No, I think that that whole area of thinking,
Hmm.
in my opinion,
Hmm.
there's a possibility percentage, but it's so small that I consider that idea of thinking
Hmm.
as a little bit beneath or lacking in depth
Yeah.
from people that I see online talking about it as
Right.
if it's on the brink.
Yeah.
Because
It's just not
why?
happening.
I don't see it, because why would someone invade when the idea is to capture and control? You can easily do that through economics, and they do.
Hmm.
We're already beholden to other countries for products. That's better than having to pay guards stand duty outside outskirts of a town that you're control. I mean, so to
Yeah.
me, it's economic, and yes, wars are played out,
Hmm.
but out there.
Well, I think that something like that should be accepted for what it is, a work of fiction, a what if scenario. And I mean, you don't have to go back all that far to see a lot of things like that, like the Omega Man or Soylent
Yeah,
Green. There's a lot of dystopian films, Logan's Run,
I think it's too naive,
you know.
especially now in today's world,
Hmm.
to think those things as, no, anything can happen,
Sure.
but why bother if I own the items that you need, and with the money that you've paid my company from said country, I've then turned around and bought properties, businesses,
Hmm.
everything you eat, everything you require, you have to filter economically through me. So you can go play with your guns,
So,
that your Rambo. So that's what I'm thinking. That's more reality based as to what it is, as opposed to taking over Lubbock, Texas, or something like that.
yeah, I, I I tend to agree with you. I mean, I have this product for sale. You want to buy this product? Okay, we exchange goods for cash or, on your debit card or whatever, and you go along your merry way because you're not really thinking beyond that. You're thinking more along the lines of I've got to get Susie to tap dance practice, and she's got to pick up Joey from baseball, and just hoping like heck you can get 50,000 miles out of this new set of tires you just put
Yeah.
on last week. You got your
People
own
just want to
business
live.
that you're, yeah. So,
I'll
you
give
know,
you. I want
it,
to throw a controversial. Well, go ahead.
it's only when that kind of thing is threatened that I think you will see people standing up and saying, wait a minute, you know.
We
And
see
it'll
people.
take it'll take more than a lot of loudmouths on TV to drive people to that point.
Well, like you said before, concerning one theme or the other that people talk about online,
Hmm.
the majority of people aren't listening to them. Don't matter who they are.
Right.
It could be the biggest names on TV.
Hmm.
Half the people in the world or more
Yeah.
aren't even paying attention to that crap.
And what percentage of the population is even going to go see that movie? You know.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to throw in a controversial one that has to do with the same thing of attacking the sun. One of the themes. Now, I'm not pro or conning or against the theory that I'm going to put out. I'm just saying that it seems like something reasonable to consider. There's a lot to do in recent years and forever and a day with immigration coming in being a sore point, and I understand why. But as of late, I've started to think something slightly different. Seeing the different variables. It doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that I believe it or not. I just, but I thought it is all.
Hmm.
I think within the big hype of all this and people fearing, you know, number one, there are obvious dangers because you can filter in people that could commit certain acts because we don't know where they're at and stuff. So putting all that other stuff aside, which I know is there too,
Hmm.
one variation that I've thought of is that the population of the U.S.
Hmm.
has fallen below replacement.
Okay.
Americans are concerned with American things, such as living a good life, having products to buy and sell, defending the culture, just the things that Americans are concerned. Oh, and the structure of how life works, the way we've seen on TV all our lives. That's how Americans think in general broad way. But the way the government thinks, I couldn't say one way or the other, and it depends on who's there and who's not, and the things. But it appears to me that there's a possibility that an added advantage, even though it's a illegal situation, and even above the concerns of Americans that see it as a problem. Hey, we've got people that are coming in, and there's all these problems attached to that. For the government, I'm kind of thinking that there's an aspect to it of that these are influx of numbers that will eventually, yes, replace the non what we're not replacing now just by sheer baby births for future generations, which also imply economic, because these people coming in, they don't necessarily speak the language, they have no idea of our lifestyles, a bunch of stuff. But one generation out or two, like myself, my parents came here when they were, and I'm not saying this to justify it because my parents were like none of that. Um, but I'm saying it because I've looked at it, and I think it's a possibility. It seems to me that there might be an alternate because the one side of the politics and the other, they talk a lot, but just like spending our money, this they allow. So could it be in part, apart from the other things that we've talked about in the past, could it be in part that it's a way of feeding into the system? It may cause havoc, but people deal with it one way or the other, and generations out, they just simply become what they're going to become, Americans. Although there's this legal question that we're concerned about, but they're concerned about money and turnover and forward looking decades in advance. I think it's something to consider. I think that other countries in Europe are doing the same thing, but in different ways. Italy's accepting people to purchase property for $1, as an example. The world is not replacing its people sufficient so that future generations, so the country can prosper. Can that turn around? Yes, I've heard, but it's going in the wrong direction. But I have not looked at it more than what I just told you. But I think that there's an angle there that might be somewhat reasonable. I think.
Well, I have a few questions about it. We admit legally, depending upon who you listen to, anywhere from 850 to 950
Thousand.
thousand people every year legally.
Yeah.
And that's not everybody who's applying.
No.
So my point is we wouldn't have to let the illegals in. We could simply let the waiting list of the legals in. if it was just a simple numbers replacement type of a thing. Just
Hmm.
my opinion.
I
Um,
think. Well, let me answer that. I think
mhm,
that everything they do. So the problem is, in my reply to you, is that what I'm about to say. There's a lot of things that I'm going to leave to the side because that would get in the weeds. But
mhm,
there's a lot of assumptions as well because we don't
mhm.
know what other people are thinking that are in positions to do said things. So this is just speculation and this and
Sure.
that. But to answer your question, we have a two-party system, although it's a multi-party system, and they represent the people to whatever degree they do. But Americans in general are concerned with um, the proper order of things that benefit their well-being, as it should be. But they're not looking at things such as population replacement for the future or any other number of things. But the government may, and I don't know this, but they may be influxing because one party is going to represent people that don't want this sort of thing. So there's always going to be, if they do it illegally, do you see what I'm saying? So it could be
Well,
done illegally, but yet the government's accepting it, and these people are going to have to be swallowed by hook or crook. And
well,
they, so it's not like they don't do things that are against our standards as it stands now. I mean, the amount of things the government has done outside our standards is innumerable. So whatever, that would be sort of my answer.
okay. Well, I think you are on the right track to a point, but I think it's less about replacing our people because of our low birth rates, because worldwide birth rates are down in almost every continent.
Hmm.
It even in Asia, most of Asia, not all,
Yeah,
birth rates are down.
yeah,
People just aren't having as many kids.
yeah,
Certain countries in Africa, the birth rate is still, you know, climbing at the same rate it always has. But most of Europe, all of North America, most of South America, birth rates are down. So it's not a US only thing. I think you are on the right track in that you're right. It is a numbers game, but I think it has more to do with redrawing congressional districts and apportionment and allocation of funds from this bottomless government pile of money than it has to do with the population as a whole. I think it's more about we want more of that government pie. So if our population is X here, well, we can get a new congressional district because of population density. And now we got more government money because we have all these people that we've got to take care
yeah. I I I don't disagree with that as a reasonable
of. Mm-hmm.
and fairly obvious one. I had a conversation with a friend and he brought that one up first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I explained my theory.
Mm-hmm.
My theory doesn't exclude,
Yep.
or it doesn't have to it can coexist with what you're suggesting, which
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not
have,
poo pooing your theory. I'm just suggesting there may be more to it, that I don't think there's any one thing.
no, I'm not saying that there's one thing, but I'm saying that um you're seeing this. So if your population, if you have a tribe in a village and you
Mm-hmm.
need soldiers to fight
Mm-hmm.
or produce and till the land, and your people aren't producing, and there's a village over there, you bring those people in and into your, the Roman Empire. One time Steve and I were talking and he brought up, and I'm bringing this up, but I'm not trying to call Steve, I'm just saying because it Steve said, well, in Iberia or Spain, the Romans enslaved the Spanish. And I said, well, no, that's not how it worked, although um, that did happen. Um, there was a set amount of, but, and why I'm tying it to this is that when Rome went into an area, yeah, it wasn't like people had American constitutional, it wasn't that
Yeah.
world, like we're not there. They weren't there, but they did have some. Um, they would go into a place, and what happened is after a time, they would convert the people in those areas into Romans. Now they weren't Romans from Rome, but the point is that they
They
branched out
subjects of the empire. Yeah.
and they became, you know, and whatnot. But in this case, but you know, but there were they did enslave certain people, and things happened. But whatever. The point is that the United States is kind of that into its fold. Across time, people Americanize with their own kinks involved. You know, depending on what region you're
Hmm.
in. We're a good example here, you and I. There's more that we share in common, at least at the level that we converse and exchange ideas,
Hmm.
than we have differences, even though we have different backgrounds.
Sure.
But what happens if the country's not producing its children or new people? It may not bother us now,
Hmm.
but in the long run, it doesn't accept. It doesn't help to propagate um, all things like tilling of land and stuff. Now, if the population shrinks, our economy shrinks, and the power of the country's power is based on the people. They may have weapons controlled by Washington, the executive, they may have all this and that, but without the people, it's kind of like if another country has more people and you don't have as much, that's going to affect the amount of money circulating, the amount of products being.
Sure.
So bringing people in, yes, I understand the legal, not legal, is is annoying, detrimental to Americans now because they're looking at the situation here now, and what those people are people coming in illegally. I'm not making a defense for illegally
Hmm.
entering. I'm saying that could it be that the shuffling of people around, Spain's doing it now too. They're saying, "Come on in," but we're doing something different where it's, well, no, actually, other countries are. Actually, Ireland has problems like this too. There seems to be a theme where countries are allowing immigration in, is what I'm saying. If you look through the news, you'll see that.
It,
So
it,
I'm thinking that it's acquiring more people. They could give a crap about an American, in my opinion, if this is right. If what I'm saying is right to a degree, they could give a crap about the interests of Americans culturally speaking. What we are in this little scenario is production for the tax machine, production for the future of the
well,
machine.
yeah. There's a lot of truth to that for sure. There's a lot of truth to that because the more working people you have, the more revenue the government's going to bring in.
Right.
But look at our government. It's not interested in revenue.
In what?
It's not interested in revenue because it knows that, I've said it before as a joke, but it is the case. The freedom of the press is alive and well at the U.S. Mint. That's why I don't agree with Marsh about this. Social Security's always been a big Ponzi scheme. We need millions of immigrants if you want your kids to have a retirement plan. No, they'll just print more money. They
No,
don't
no.
care about that. They've been doing that forever.
Yeah, but the problem is we the problem is that the more, so I'll have to give it, there's half and half. We need more people, whether they're born here. Now, I'm not saying put my decision making aside. I think that people should come in legally.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
but putting that aside, that's my thinking. And if we need more people, it should be done through
Well,
Congress, and the process should occur to bring in more people. That it
well,
creates a
do it
documentation.
within the law. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But my consideration and yours and the rest of Americans across the United States is looking at America and the situation in one way, in a broad sense, because we're affected at the gas pump right now. We're affected, but
Sure.
these people, at some level, are looking out in the future. So in reality, it doesn't matter at that level because they don't care that it affects. Oh, it affects the Miami style of living and the culture bred up here,
Hmm.
or New York with or people in the
Yeah.
Ozarks. They could give a crap whether
No. And
people are. So what I'm
and
saying is that maybe to one, without discounting what you said, I think that what you said is actually makes a whole lot of sense. I was aware of it. I'm just bringing in this extra little caveat
well,
due to population.
there's another little one to be thinking about. It also makes a great wedge to divide us further. And the more you and I are divided, not specifically you and me, but the more me and my neighbor are divided, the happier they are. This is a great issue to divide people and start arguments and start fights.
It does
Happens to
work.
work.
It does work that way, but it does work that way as well because
Well,
the proof is
um,
in the pudding. It does.
I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it until somebody can prove me wrong. They've been talking about this issue my entire life and before I was born. They've been talking about this issue. When you finally take up the tally, there are about 600 people in charge of all this in Washington, D.C. If they wanted to fix it, it'd be fixed. They
Yeah,
have no interest in fixing it because it's a wedge to divide us so that we will continue fighting with one another about it and having debates and arguing online and screaming at our neighbors and this, that, and the other so that we're distracted with that and they stay in power. If they
maybe.
wanted to fix it, it'd be fixed.
But here's the other advantage of if they wanted to fix it, it would be fixed. From our point of view, there's something that needs fixing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're doing just as planned, and just as planned is allowing all these people in. What concerns us is that you don't want to be sitting in your patio and you see a group of people with masks or whatever coming running through and drinking out of your hose before they continue. As Americans, we don't. That's not a. But what these people, because if you think about every subject matter in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what they do, it seems to fly in the face of what the average American
Mm-hmm.
um thinks is necessary.
Exactly.
But they do it just the same. So that's
Exactly.
that's why I think at one level, because the one side is not arguing the case. You can make the argument that they are, but it's almost like it's excessive, and yet it's happening,
It's an election year.
but it's excessive.
It's an
And
election year. It's an election year. It's gonna be about immigration or the economy or sexism or racism. It's going to be about one of those things or a
all of
combination of all the above.
it's all of them.
And it happens every election cycle. That's why these things are coming up more and more now. We're into April. Wait till August. You know, this is the primaries. This is just the amateur hour.
So fundamentally, go ahead. Go ahead.
But it's going to be, there has to be something that they can use as a wedge to drive between. See, the scariest thing to these mopes is what you and I are doing right now, having a civil discussion with no acrimony, with no yelling and screaming and no fighting.
Yeah, but we
This is
don't
the
have different.
scariest thing in the world to them.
But you and I and many Americans don't
Mm-hmm.
have disagreements on a fair amount of these issues because
Mm-hmm.
but they do it anyways. And
Yeah.
some people do. There is there is a
Mm-hmm.
leaning left and right, and they have different variations on the theme.
Right.
But if you consider what, okay, bottom line, and I think is roughly fair to, from the treatment of veterans across a lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
after the fact, not during, oh well, hell, but after the fact. And not everybody, and not in every town, and not with every doctor, and not with every hospital, not. But I'm saying that there seems to be the concept of, I guess we'll go back to the Matrix. In the Matrix, and I know this may cheapen it for some people, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a lot of themes, morals in that um, movie, that even though it's presented in this sci-fi manner, there's underlying themes that are quite that match other things. In any event, and I'm not the only one to say that because there's a lot of obvious. But in one moment in the movie, the guy called Morpheus looks at Neo, the
Mm-hmm.
protagonist, and he says, "And then the machines took over, but it was us that darkened the skies in order to cut them off from sunlight because that's what they were using to power their vehicles. And strangely enough, then they realized that we produce a human person produces get see the key themes, produces enough energy, electricity, to be used for energy if we can only farm humans. So instead of them being born naturally, we will grow them." Get the theme, not the actual
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi. And then Morpheus says, "So Neo, humans are produced to become this," and he pulls out a Duracell battery.
Mm-hmm.
If you switch out Duracell for us being cash cows,
Mm-hmm.
or cash, um, and then you look at the lay of the land, cynical.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, it seems like everything they do is wrong, or wrong for our, it appears that way. Maybe there's something that we don't know beyond, and everything that's being done is just right, spot on, awesome. It doesn't seem that way, but then again, my interests are me now within the time frame of an American's life. But I think that there's something to it. Now what you said, and putting all that to the side, what you said I think is very, very much an obvious, um, if I had to vote on it, would be a yes. Mine is a little bit more speculative.
Well, but again, I won't poo-poo that idea simply because there may be some of that in there. Because it's very rare that you will find one single thing that is the cause of all the troubles. It's a bunch of little things. So there may be some of exactly what you're saying. There may be some of exactly what I'm saying, and there may be a whole heck of a lot of something that neither one of us has figured out yet.
There's a lot of unknowns, but the
Yeah.
obvious. So, if I were to go with my first level instincts, I would stay in what most people that I see do, and they say, in the case of immigrants, illegally,
Mm,
they're coming over. It's against the law. They're flooding our situation. They're causing high crime. They're causing this, and that. I understand all that. I don't disagree with it one bit. I see that. Then I think to myself, why, if they're causing such angst, or there's the potential of angst, plus what you said about
mhm.
voting, redistricting, and so on and so forth, and then there's the burden, taxpayer burden, and all these things. Okay, I see that. and it's all obvious and reasonable to me. That said, if I were in a position of power, um, and we have a shortage of people, I don't see the immigrant, and you'll notice the way they speak, unless it's the left and right situation. But
Mhm.
you'll notice, or I think, that they don't see the immigrant. If they did, because many of them could be coming from places that are sleeper
Mhm.
cells type people,
Yeah.
and then they install themselves in a neighborhood, town, township, city,
Well, a
and
good
then
percentage of the people that are coming across the border illegally now are not even from Latin America.
well, and even if they were, we can't say what we need. In theory, I think it's reasonable, is for a documented path, just like you and I would
Yeah,
be.
exactly. And and
Okay.
and and the laws are in place to do that. But you also have to remember that a certain percentage of the population believes there shouldn't be a border to begin with. And they're actually pretty vociferous about that. They believe that there should be an open border and there shouldn't be any of these checkpoints or lines or any of that other stuff. And I'm not going to play pin the tail on the immigrant here. The people at the border crossings that are standing out there waiting for the bar to lift so they can come through,
They've been signaled.
they've been told that's how you do it.
Yeah, they've been signaled, and the thing,
So to them, they think they're doing it right.
or maybe not, because
You
we
know,
can't necessarily. Because
but
I
they're
don't
not
know any
but
reality where
but
I would.
they're not the ones who are sneaking in, having coyotes bring them in U-Hauls or cross country through the desert or something like that.
So to add to what you're saying, the people that I see, America at large, to the
Hmm.
degree that I do, that argue the points,
Hmm.
really are focused on the immigrants,
Hmm.
and I think that that's first level
Hmm.
of focus, but that's not second level, third level, fourth level.
Well,
Um, Now, it doesn't mean that third, fourth, fifth level of looking at something means that those levels are correct. But the purpose of doing the exercise is to look at the different whys and maybes, just to get an idea of possibilities, as opposed to just. So
well,
why, and I guess they do, the American public at large is outraged at why government does, and like you said, there's people that believe that there shouldn't be borders. I guess the whole thing is very complicated,
hmm,
because there's a lot of interests um at play.
hmm.
But um I just wanted to introduce, and I agree with that redistricting thing that you said. I think it's very reasonable that that would be something,
Well,
if
it's
I
a
were in,
very real thing. You're already seeing it happen.
yeah, if I were in a position of of politics, and I needed to conquer areas,
Hmm.
um and this was available to me as an option, um and I was a no good
Hmm.
heel of a, politician, which usually happens to a lot of people because they get the power,
Hmm.
and that corrupts. At least that's what they say, and I think that that's reasonable too. But I think that, why wouldn't I, in that scenario, in that position,
Hmm.
not tilt the scale in order to favor um, a positive outcome when it
In
comes
your
to that,
favor. Yeah.
using immigrants. Now, that said, um, I think that there's something to do with what I said about population replacement, because at some point, the older people get, and this is not going to happen today, tomorrow, the next year, or in a decade, or whatnot, but I can't think of an American government that doesn't look to the future and sees what the problems are. And there is a problem with replacement. So I think it's something to consider in the whole thing, as opposed to just the one layer. But either
Mm,
way,
I, I have to disagree with you because I can easily see a government that isn't looking towards the future. I see it every day. It's kick the can down the road. It's an official SEP. somebody else's problem. I've got to get reelected today. I don't give a damn about 2030. I'll be dead. I got to get reelected today because I got to keep that money coming in. How else does somebody who make $170,000 a year end up with a personal? Um, how do they end up with a wealth of over $10 million? How do you do that?
Well, politicians are allowed to lie. A lot of people think that
Oh yeah. So long as you're doing it on the House floor or on the Senate floor, you can say anything you want to say, and you cannot be touched or sued for it.
a lot of people think, it seems like they think,
Mhm.
can't say that for sure, but it looks like it, considering the comments that they leave behind,
Mhm.
um, that politicians, oh, they're liars, this, and that. But when the ones that they favor say whatever they say, well, they can't be lying and this and that. They lie,
They all do.
or they admit what's not
Mhm.
uh, necessary to, or
Yeah,
their best light.
that's a
But
lie by omission.
but
Sure.
another thing that they can do is that they can inside trade.
Oh yeah. All that, you know.
They can inside trade. I mean, there's a level to which, but this this is the form. It appears that this is the form of payment
Mm.
that the people that are untouchable use in order to get away with stuff.
Sure.
So deals and laws are passed
Sure.
based on, I'm giving you a tip, you're giving me
Mhm.
a bill,
Yeah. Look at
and you're
what's
gonna make money from it.
look at what's going on in California right now. They're passing taxes on fast food joints and on restaurants, with one exception, and that is if that restaurant bakes bread on the premises. How many restaurants can you think of that bake bread on the premises for sale?
Not many.
I don't mean biscuits to go with your dinner. I mean, you can walk into this place and you can buy some bread.
I
I
don't.
can think of one, and it's called Panera. They're exempt from these taxes.
And how about Pizza Huts and such?
No, that's not baking bread. That's a baked product, but it's not baking bread. We're talking about you can go into Panera and you can buy ciabatta bread, or you can buy whatever.
You can't then, any company,
Mhm.
restaurant can
So
then buy a small little stove and just bake one loaf
I
and
was
call it.
just getting ready to say, so if you live in California, look out, because McDonald's is going to start selling uncooked bread, English muffins, things like that. I will bet you in the next 5 years, fast food restaurants are going to have bakeries on site and are going to be selling bread.
Now, just I guess to wrap the whole thing up, I think that, obviously the unknowns that you were saying, we don't know the unknowns, so we can't properly, if you don't have the lay of the land,
Hmm.
um, we can't diagnose correctly, and therein lies the one part of the equation that is missing. So, um, and politicians can lie,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying that they all do, but all
I
humans
am.
do.
I am.
Well, I'm not saying that they all do. So all humans will lie in their lifetime any number of times at any degree, just like any other number of things. That's, you know, so it's a human problem, and people
Hmm.
have special interests,
Hmm.
and and so
And people have self-interest, and it all comes down to the money and the power. And that's why in 2024 we're still talking about immigration and gay rights and women's rights and racial problems and things like that. If they shut up, we, the people, us people out here, we could solve it ourselves.
a big problem
we're
also
not
is,
we're not allowed to. That's the problem.
Well, a big problem is, I think either you or someone else said, at some point, I forget now really, but we talked about it. When you go out on the street
Mm-hmm.
in your day to day,
Mm-hmm.
the difference between the media and the behavior of people
Uh-huh.
in normal actual life
Yeah.
are polar opposites in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the extreme.
Yeah.
Even though there might there will be stuff going on in people's heads to whatever degree,
Sure.
but we don't have we're not privy to that, and
Mm-hmm.
so what we see is what we see.
Sure.
So a big problem is also the media um infesting. Now I'm not calling for, we need the media. I'm just calling them excessive. Um, but I'm not saying one way or the other.
Well,
Do whatever they
that's why I suspend belief until I've checked it out for myself, you know.
Yeah,
And I never accept news from one source. Never. Because you're going to have, well, I don't remember who said it. There are three sides to every story. There's pro, there's con, and there's the truth. And if you take in your news from several sources, somewhere in there you'll be able to collate the truth if you can get past your own biases. You
it's
know,
very difficult to get
I
past one's own biases.
I know that, but that's why I say you got to be hard on your own opinions. Take them outside and beat them around with a baseball bat a little bit, and just make sure that your arguments actually hold water. Because if they don't make sense to you, they're damn sure not going to make sense to anybody else.
The
So,
problem is really the introduction of, or the natural presence of bias in individuals.
well, understood, but again, I that's why I don't see the whole premise of civil war or any of that other
Exactly.
stuff coming to fruition, because if you go out on the street today and just watch, you're not seeing, I would say maybe you're seeing 10% of the problems that the media is absolutely apoplectic about.
I see the Civil War question that people really harp on.
It's a non-starter.
On one side, it's a non-starter. On one side of the spectrum, of the political spectrum, as foolishness
Hmm.
and exaggeration. Not that I'm above or below either
Hmm.
or in one way or the other at some point in time or multiple times, because I fall into the category of human, and what it is what it is. But
Hmm.
I see civil war as the economic situation, not physical altercations, although that might be. I see it more like, we're going to conquer over your industry, and now we've captured it. We don't need to knock on your door with shotguns and freaking pit bulls. And by the way, I didn't mean to throw pit bulls under the bus on that one. Um, but you get the point. Or Doberman. Well, let's stop throwing other. But the point is, I see the capture or the Civil War as a simple matter of, we're a country and you're the country we want to overtake. All we got to do is, number one, fill it with people that are our people. We're going to lose some of them because they're going to start believing the hype of that country, but we're going to still have, like, there's Cuban people that have been working here and they just got busted. One of them got busted and it was sent to jail. It's in the news. We're going to send people over, they're going to mix with the population, and what's going to end up happening is that a certain number will fall through the wayside because they'll believe the hype of that country, in this case the United States. They'll integrate, or they'll just believe the ideals. But a certain number are going to stay true to the mother fatherland,
Hmm.
and we're going to have them purchase businesses, and we're going to have them purchase and put them in positions of authority, and that's going to be our conquering. And that
And
conquering and that war has been going on for
well, it's been going on for a couple
ever.
centuries, simply
Exactly.
because um, There's always going to be a certain percentage of that or attempts of that. Yeah, you're right. It does happen. It sounds like fiction, but
Mhm.
fiction has drawn from that. Have you ever read the book The Manchurian Candidate?
Yeah. Well, I've seen the movie.
Seen the movie? Okay, there's an example of it. I mean, and it sounds like you say anything like that, people go, "Oh my God, here we go with the conspiracy theories." No, they've caught them. People have been caught in this country doing exactly that. It is a very real thing. And that's why legal immigration is the answer. I'm not opposed to people coming to this country. I think if you are going to go through the process to get a visa, which is, it's not like you just go down and throw down $10 and okay, here's your visa. There's a process that's involved. And if you are going to go through the process of getting your visa and come here legally, and you're going to work and attempt to become a citizen, I'm all for it. I say welcome aboard with open arms. And that's another reason why I won't blame those people that are lined up down at Juarez or wherever trying to get through the gate, because they've been told, most of them, that's how you do it.
I think
So
that the weight of
I,
it,
I can't blame them either.
I think that the weight of the scenario is the things I mentioned before, what's
Hmm.
important to us as Americans on the ground at the moment during our lifetime. And
Hmm.
then there's a situation at the governmental level or special interest level looking
Yeah.
towards the future for whatever ends. But one part of it has to do with the situation, one part of it with what you said about redistricting and other factors that we're not aware of. But I
Hmm.
think that um,
Well,
the sleight of hand is that folks focus on the people. There's people here now. Not that I know this, I'm just going to suggest it as a possibility. But why wouldn't this happen? If I were another government, I would use all my tools available
well, of course.
against your. Well, no, let me say the thing. All my tools available, apart from all the other things that I would do to overtake you, I would also, in order to overtake you, send people in legally, getting
Hmm.
all the documentation as pristine as possible, so they become the perfect uh,
Understood.
citizens. And then when I want these sleeper cells to activate or even never activate, they just stay there and acquire for my interests. And I think that that's the world situation.
But they don't even have to do that because you can do 99% of that online anymore.
No, they're here, dude.
Well,
They are here.
I'm not saying they're not. What I'm saying is that you don't even have to go that far to put anybody in that deep, because a good percentage of what you're talking about can be done online. Yes, having boots on the ground is always better, but that's not a cheap process. You know, we know for a fact that the Soviet Union ran schools for just that purpose. You know, yeah, people that look like you and me that have absolutely zero trace of an accent, but you know,
There are people in this country.
but I
If I
don't,
if I had,
but that is an absolute minority.
let me say this from the son of Cuban exiles that grew up in this world and where spies existed all the time, and the
Hmm.
Cuban community, and they were found out at
Hmm.
the highest level in the Pentagon and arrested, and
Hmm.
Cuban, and not too long ago, found in universities
Hmm.
as working as professors. The problem is that we're not aware of everything until it happens.
Hmm.
So we're in the dark but there are people here in this
Hmm.
country, and I don't
Oh
know who
yeah.
they are. This is a that are upstanding Americans viewed by people that are great, that believe in the ideals,
Hmm.
and they are exemplary examples of the
Hmm.
most perfect you would never doubt. And what
Hmm.
they are is involved in whatever they're involved in.
Yeah,
This is the level that so
it was just within the last couple of years there were a couple of Asians who escaped America just in front of the law catching them. They were working in the Department of Defense and other government agencies. I mean, there have been a few that were caught, and we're talking within the last couple of years. So, that's always a concern, whether it be legally or illegally. But
Right.
the simple point remains is that we, as a country, just like every country on the face of this earth, has a right to know who's coming here, who
Well,
they are, and we reserve the right to make sure they are who they say they are.
yeah, unless, well, that's at the level of our understanding as Americans
Hmm.
and of what we understand of the law. Because if we have to follow certain laws and guidelines and bylines, then why would not people coming in? So we
Well,
understand this.
absolutely.
So we understand this. It's a given.
Hmm.
But my suggestion was that above our heads,
Hmm.
in spite of the reality that we've been given, the one that we grew up on, the Chuck Norris one that I'm fond of, the Rambo one that I'm fond of, the GI Joe cartoon. The above that, it seems to be that the thicker in the weeds one, the more brush one moves aside, and you don't have to go that far, like you're saying.
Yeah, we agree on this.
If you look at just the crap bad decisions, um, either they're incompetent, either they're doing it
Nope.
on purpose,
Right.
or well, wait a second. There's various reasons. You like the on purpose one. I like that one too, but that's malicious intent. If they were ignorant, well, if they were ignorant, that would be. I don't know if that would be even worse, dude.
No,
But
you don't get that. You don't get to that position and build up a net worth of 10 or $20 million by being stupid. These are not incompetent, stupid people. I'm sure some of them are. And they get weeded out real fast. They're not the ones on these choice committees, and they're not the ones being dated by the lobbyists and such.
yeah,
It's
so
it's
uh,
this. It's money and it's power.
right.
And that's what it all comes down to. The vehicle used is the only things that, is left open to really to discussion. Is it for this? Is it for that? Is it for the other? Well, that's up to us to speculate on, but at the end of the day, it's all circled around money and power.
Yeah,
Keep it at every means, by any means possible.
an altruistic. What's the word? What's the word when even not even Steven, but you want goodwill? There's a word for it.
Egalitarianism.
Egalitarianism. Um, I'm very egalitarian,
Hmm.
broadly speaking. If the facts change in specific ways, then things are going to change because, unfortunately, apart from being egalitarian, we also have to survive.
Right.
So we're
But
going to have to deal with stuff as it happens. But broadly speaking, I'm egalitarian towards other people because who am I? I'm not above other. Like we're all human beings. I would like to think that of the people that run this, but it's very hard to do. That's very
well,
hard to
that's where my
do.
cynicism comes from.
It's very hard to do, Mark.
That's where my cynicism comes from,
Which which I share
because
with you.
they've been talking about most of these messages for about most of these topics rather my entire life,
Yeah.
but that's all they do is talk because they have no interest in fixing it. If they fix it, what are they going to talk about?
Um.
What are they going to use as a wedge to divide us? What are they going to use to argue about? Two legs bad, four legs good. That's all they've got. If you take away the legs, what do they got?
Yeah, but
Then
the
they'd have to
argument,
go out and get real jobs.
but the football kicking back and forth in terms of political this and that is one layer of the thing, which I know you know,
That's
but
what
then
gets them elected.
but let me say, but then they I hate to go in the cynical, but just in a broad thing, there are other trappings part of the thing that always seem to focus on, and the news bit is the one that sort of focuses the lens and allows for that division. But everything seems to be set up at a certain degree, as opposed to the original intent, assuming that that was what it was according to
Mhm.
what's written, is to grow the individual
Excuse me.
prosperity of the citizen. The purpose of those leaders that are put there by the people is so that the people can prosper or have the conditions allowing them to go about their business.
That's what's supposed to happen, and it hasn't since the 17th Amendment's been passed.
Well,
There are any number of reasons why, and it's because money and power. They don't give a damn about any of us. They really don't. They don't give a damn about whether we prosper or not. Because if we don't prosper and we end up in Section 8 housing on public assistance, one side or the other is going to use that as another wedge to divide more people. See, we've got all these people in Section 8 housing and on public assistance because you evil people over there are doing X, Y, and Z. Never mind whose fault it really is. I can sit on my butt and not go to work all day long and complain that it's somebody else's fault. I'm not saying that that happens a lot, but it happens enough. And if it's taught behavior, and that's what you're teaching your kids to do, why wouldn't they do it? They think that's normal life. There's no incentive to succeed, there's no incentive to prosper.
do
They
you
don't
think that?
want you to prosper, they want you obedient. They
Do,
want
do
you an obedient worker to pay your taxes every April 15th
well, yeah,
and then vote for me. And then, other than that, shut up.
well, yeah, and regardless
Hmm.
of the fluctuations of the, um, damn it, you said that it was a good point, and I focused on it, and I lost what I was originally going to say.
Sorry. We
But it
need
was
to
a good,
think about.
it was a good point. It was a good point, and I had what did I say before? And then that what was
They
that
sh-
about?
they should be interested in us prospering.
They should be
And
interested in us prospering, but
what
somehow,
you would think that if I made more money, that's more tax money they'd get. But they're not really interested in getting tax money. They're really interested in being able to use me as a number to support their agenda,
yeah,
you know. Because
yeah,
if I prosper and I'm a successful businessman, I'm seen by one side as this is an example. We want more people like this. But if
I
I
remember.
fail and I'm in Section 8 housing on public assistance, I'm used by the other side and say, see, this is what your policies are doing to people. So,
I remember. So, um, unfortunately, it's an impossibility. But education, which people harp on one way or the other,
mhm,
depending. Um, we we should ideally, what you said, to wrap it up with that, at least on
mhm.
my end, and then you say what, as opposed to knee jerk reaction, which we're prone to do because human beings are
Yeah,
human beings, and
sure.
I'm talking about us in America
Yeah,
in
you
particular.
respond to things, sure.
Well, even though that's true, the concept, which is very hard to do because we do have what we've talked about, ego. In
Mhm.
the past, with Steve, we were talking about it and stuff as it being a problem and whatnot. Bias, which we've talked about. If we could manage to, and it's not going to happen because we're individuals and everybody's got different, and that's how they control everything you said. Um, everything you said. If people thought layer two, layer three, and four before committing to a important decision one way or the other, This is not a demand. This is
Hmm.
a thought experiment request. I'm not this is not a demand hammering, uh but if people did that and searched out the variety of sources like you were saying before saying, oh well no, this is what it is, because what they're doing with that, if you go to the first acceptable thing to you, that's, it may be true, but chances are it could also be false. That's your bias speaking to you, saying no, you're going in this direction with this idea. And we all do that, but the point is that alternate possibilities should be weighed, kind of depending on the importance of the thing, because just in case, if we want accuracy and a better
Well,
decision making.
you're talking about education. I think that it comes down to parents to teach their kids as well, um, and don't leave everything to the schools. The schools will take care of the academic side of the thing, but the school is not going to teach a kid how to get through life. The school is going to teach what it needs to teach to get a good test score to keep getting the government money. Okay, that's fine. The kid can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but the kid doesn't know what insurance is. The kid doesn't know how to vote, why to vote. The kid doesn't know a good bit of what you and I take for granted in daily life that we didn't know when we came out of school. We had to learn step by step. Kid doesn't know how to buy car insurance. Kid doesn't know the difference between whole life insurance and term insurance. Kid doesn't know if, you know, 2% on a savings account is a good interest rate or not. Kid doesn't know how to invest money or save money for their future. They don't know what an IRA is. So it's up to parents to teach life skills to kids. And part of those life skills have to be independence and critical thinking and to think for yourself. Don't be too willing to believe everything somebody with charisma says and not to believe the first source, no matter what that source is.
Yeah,
Just, we have to teach our kids to be independent and free thinking individuals and be critical.
it's very, very, very tough, the concept that we should be critical, because
Well,
we tend to follow the path that soothes and comforts us. And it may be true. It may be true that the path one follows under any given subject may just turn out to be the most reasonable course to take, but that's not going to hit every time under every category at every turn. And if you follow your that first goal, like you're saying, you you're basically creating a paradigm of, I hate, it's kind of like your carrot, it's ignorance. It's
yeah,
a tough one because that's available to all of us at the same time.
yeah,
So
you
it's a
can't
predicament.
teach, you can't teach what you don't know.
It's a pickle. It's a human
Mm-hmm.
pickle that
Yeah.
we all, unfortunately.
but but
So
but we do teach kids those things in some regards, you know. um I would venture to say most parents teach kids not to get in a car with a stranger who's looking for a puppy, you know. Uh, so you are taught a little bit of critical thinking in that respect. You're taught to, to, you're taught to be wary of certain things, you know. But we need to take it a little bit further than that and teach kids how to be independent and
well,
how to want to be independent.
that's not gonna suit the machine very much.
Screw the machine. Screw the, to hell with the machine.
I'll just say this. This is the last thing I'll say, because I mean we
Yeah,
do
we
have
need
to.
to wrap it up. We've been on over 2.5 hours.
Last thing I'll say. If it comes down to it, the machines are gonna. Now I gotta be careful with this because you never know what you're gonna do in the future.
Yeah.
You might become the bad guy. Anything's possible. We don't know the circumstances, but my intention is that if the if it hits the fans
Hmm.
and it's us against the machines, I kind of, even though there's a lot of annoying people out there, I might be one of them in certain
Hmm.
occasions or more than not.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna go ahead and take the hammer to the machines repeatedly because
Well,
I kind of like this or carbon based organic.
I'm in charge of the light switch, and
Uh
I'm in
oh.
charge of what I plug in and what I don't plug
Oh,
in.
okay, I see.
So, you know, this machine is enough for me. Thank you very much. He says with a robot that does woodworking for him.
You say that while you're interconnected with the World Wide Web in so many
Uh huh.
ways, and everything is technological advance.
Hmm.
I am. If this were like 100 to 200, you'd be half cyborg with telescopic. You
Yeah.
say, "I'm
Well, you're
fully human
assuming
here,
I'm
folks.
not. You know.
Fully human here,
this
folks.
this
Excuse
this
me."
this you think it's hair? It could be stainless steel. I may have raided the Brillo pads underneath the sink.
I'm glad that we had the befores with
Mhm.
beautiful simplicity to whatever degree we had
Yeah.
because technology could be with the AI and all that, which we won't talk
Mhm.
about. We're gonna land it.
Yeah, we got to land the plane.
We'll stop there because do you have any final thoughts?
No, just goodbye. I mean, you know.
Do you have any final thoughts after your final thoughts? After your final thoughts?
No, not really.
Okay, so folks, we go
Mhm.
live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. Here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. We have a website over at Facebook under the same name and a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And we're also sponsored by.
Harneal Media. Let me pull up the right banner. There we go. Now we can take that down. All right. Harneal Media, your web source, your web solution. If you want to become part of the machine, reach out to Steve. He can hook you up and keep the evil machines at bay. Very competitively priced. Just one hell of a guy. I mean, I'm proud to call him a friend. And there is a link to Harneal Media in everything on this YouTube channel. And it's that way for a reason. Uh, Check him out. He'll help you with a web store. He'll help you with an e-commerce site. He'll help you with merch. I mean, the guy, how he does everything, I have no idea, but he gets it done. He gets it done very well. Proud to call him a friend. And again, proud to call him the sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. So reach out to him. Harneal Media, that's HARNEAL Media.com. Sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was pretty freaking good. That was such a self serving thing to that was the most iconically self-serving thing. No, but let me tell you why I was thinking that. I was thinking that because in the exchange, Mark was sharing things, and I was sharing things, as you all know. And we're not trying to Sunday morning this, but I it helped me in hearing him referring to the certain key points, um, and I put it shuffled into what I was thinking, and that interaction helped. Sometimes it's hard to do. Again, ego and this and that
Okay.
and whatnot. But it helped me, um, and it'll probably go on helping me as I keep thinking further later. But it helped me, so very useful for me, and it was interesting. So in that context, I'm saying it was pretty darn good. Um,
Okay.
Although I did a great
I'm glad
freaking
you,
job.
I'm glad you saved yourself because I was going to ask if I could come over and borrow a cup of ego.
Um, so in any case, we hope you enjoyed it. we'll catch you guys next week, and just enjoy the rest of your week. Do the things that are meaningful to you and make you happy. Enjoy it. And so, peace.
If you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, don't name it after me. Bye bye.